Hello and welcome to this lecture on Adobe Photoshop by Eduonix Technologies. In this lecture we're going to be going over vector shape tools. I've created a new document and I've gone over to the polygon tool and I've dragged out a 5-sided polygon. As we explained in the previous video, you can use these shape tools to do just about anything. In that case I was drawing out a mask and I exited quick mask mode and I can fill that mask in with various colors and create different compositions. So you can use the shape tool interchangeably with selection tools by converting them. But when they're in their vector mode, they're much like you would edit them in Illustrator with the direct selection tool, which is Shift A, or just A depending on which one you have open, because there's two of them, and Shift is used to go back and forth between similar tools. With the direct selection tool you can edit the individual anchor points. So basically these vector tools, they operate like Illustrator. Direct selection is for individual anchor points. As you can see, I can drag that out and I can use the arrow keys, which is also called nudging, to move it around. If I hold in Shift, I get the constrain angle. This is default set to 45 degrees and 90. It'll go straight up and down, and it'll go at angles, predefined angles. If I click constrain path dragging, it kind of multiplies this effect. It allows you to go horizontally too. But just like with the direct selection tool in other programs, if I hold in Shift, I can get multiple anchor points. And if I'm pressing in Control and I hit the shape, it'll switch my selection mode to regular selection, path selection, or if I just press Shift A, I can alternate between them, or use Control. And when you hit it with Control, it switches to that, and that's a command on a Mac. So that's how to manipulate basic shapes. Now if I just, for instance, hit it with the regular path selection tool using Control or switching with Control A, I can transform by hitting Control T. When you transform a path, much like you transform anything in Photoshop, and real quick, if you hold in Alt, if you hold in Control and Alt, and just play with those different settings, holding in Shift, Control, and Alt, and you can get some pretty advanced shapes. If I wanted to flare this out, for example, I would hold in Control and Alt. Now that it's going a little bit over the bounds, I can hold in that, maybe connect it a little bit better. Now, if you notice over here, the way you can tell you have a vector shape is by a little square icon over here. And when you hit it, it'll highlight the actual shape wherever it is. It'll make it easier for you to drag it. And they behave just like layers until you right click on them and go to rasterize them. You can also group them together just with Control G. And then to manipulate them individually inside, you would just select the one you want. You rasterize them after you're done, or you can also do a few other things to them. If I go to paths, you see you get a little bit more info here on the path, and you have some options down here. One is to fill this path in with different foreground colors and to change the stroke. But what I use this for most often is for text. I'll turn it into a selection, or for whatever you need it to be a selection. And then of course to edit and change the placement of the selection, you would just use this selection tool, and now I can make this shape anywhere I want. I can make it bigger by transforming the selection. And then of course you can make the selection back into a vector shape, and it's going to use the artboards and clip off the excess here. So now that I have two vector shapes created in the same area, to get the selection on anything, whether it's a vector shape or not, you would just hold in Control and click it, and it'll make the selection around it. So it'll do this for a static shape, like right here. It'll do it for the vectors. So you can get your selection marquee that way too. Let's just take a look at some of the other options. Here in work path, I just use the path selection tool, Shift A, black arrow, to drag the polygon over into where it's visible. As you can see in the thumbnail previously, you can tell it's you can tell it's not on the artboards by the fact that it's not visible in the thumbnail. As you can see, as we begin to drag it in, it becomes visible. And you'll notice some snapping as we're going, and that's smart guides. The snap to function, and you can deselect certain things if you don't like it snapping to those, but generally zooming in will do the same thing. And your scrubby zoom is on by default. You might want to turn that off, but zooming in will do the same thing because it's relative to the screen size, not to the image itself. So as you can see, I need to get really close to snap to the edge, or I can put it anywhere here, and that's just from zooming in. So if you want a little bit more precision, just hit Z on your keyboard. That is the zoom button. Holding in Alt is zoom out, of course. But let's take a look at some of these other options. You have a new layer or new path, and what that's going to do is just create an empty path. And then on that we can do whatever we want. We can use the pen tool and some of the shape tools. Now the pen tool we're going to get into in the next one. But let's take a look at some of these shape tools and just basically how to combine them. So right now I'm in my paths. You can go on to layers, you can keep it in paths just to be able to see what you're working with. And if the thumbnails aren't big enough, just go into panel options and you click a bigger thumbnail size. That way you can definitely see what you're working with, because as you can see here, it's all black. Now if I double click on any of these icons in the layers panel, I can change the properties, such as the color, the hue, saturation, and brightness. I can change it according to any of the standard color models that you see in the color picker. So let's take a look at the other shapes really quick. The rounded rectangle tool is just like the rectangle tool, except it makes it rounded. You can accomplish this easily by just going to the properties when you're in a regular rectangle tool. I can change its color and its stroke. I can change the stroke type, whether it's dotted, dashed. I can create my custom one, like 4, 2, 10, 20. You'll be able to see how it works. And of course I have to give it a stroke. Let's give it something that'll stand out on the blue. And there's your 4, 2, 10, 20. You got 4, 2, 10, and then 20, and this is where it's actually joined. This is the 20. So you have your those properties. And just clicking on my shape again using the direct selection tool. That's how you click on vector shapes. It's these arrows down here. Don't get them confused with the regular Photoshop selection tool, which is used for dragging around the contents of a layer. So let's just go to one of our shapes, back to the rectangle, Shift A to bring up the path selection tool. Let's just zoom in on it here. Where when we click on it with the regular selection tool, shortcut key V, it brings up properties of a mask. And we'll get more into this in masks, but basically it allows you to treat this as a mask. You can feather it and create some interesting effects, especially with the dotted line. Then you can change the density, which is a relative colorimetric property. But for now, Shift Control or Shift A to bring up the path selection tool, and then we have the rest of our path properties. You can manually enter in a stroke here, or rounded corners, I'm sorry. And as you can see, it rounds this one too, skips one, 0 pixels, goes down here. It's going around it like this. And of course it puts it right here. And we have a constraint proportions lock there as well. And now here we have a version that's very similar to Pathfinder, and I'm going to draw another shape. This time we're going to get out of our rectangles and use an ellipse. And note that it's still the same, holding in Shift and Alt and Control, those kind of things, and dragging. Right now I'm holding in Alt and Shift. It's giving it to me from the center of where I clicked initially, which is right here. And Shift is making it so it's not an oval. It's making it so it's perfectly circular no matter where my mouse cursor is while I'm dragging it. I can only make it bigger and smaller. As you can see, holding in Shift gives it the 4 anchor points. Now, right now I had intersect shape areas selected, and when I put the two shape areas together, that's exactly what it did. And this is an active, as you can see by the link over here, an active effect, so that I can click this shape again and move it, and it's going to actively intersect that shape area. Same thing with editing the paths of the shape. And right here I've selected 2 rounded corners, and that's still, as you can see, it's still editable. So it's a bit different than Pathfinder and Illustrator in the sense that it's creating an active mask, which improves versatility between the products. But let's select both paths again, and let's look at the other intersection options. And if it doesn't let you, just go up to the actual right up here. We can select, we have to hold in Shift to select both of them. In this case I just used the direct selection tool. I wasn't getting the path selection tool to work properly, but either way, as you can, either way that you select both of them, you can bring up this intersection options. And here we see subtract front shape and subtract. You don't have a subtract back, it appears. I think this is divide or exclude. Okay, but as you can see, exclude, wherever it's overlapping, it's getting rid of the shape. And note how it's applying all the properties that we selected to the new paths, the new shapes that are being created, because this is all active and being applied. Then we have join, which is probably the most useful one. So make sure you play around with Control, Alt, and Shift with all of these tools. We'll get into the custom shape tool and the pen tool in the next vector shapes tutorial. But for now, just play around with all these properties using your properties panel up in view, making sure that's open. This shortcut icon looks like this. You can dock that, of course, if you haven't realized by now. Or by watching the videos, you can dock things and save workspaces quite easily as well. But practice around with all of the properties for the shapes. Practice using these tools, Shift A to go between them, as well as the different shapes, and combining them using these bottom features here, as well as the properties up here. And that's all we went over. So practice that, make sure you get it perfect, and watch the next video. Thanks.